program of Mufon Orange County. I'm Eric Hartman, the section director and your host this evening. And my usual statements, Mufon OC is an affiliate of the Mutual UFO Network, an international organization with a mission to educate, investigate, and research unidentified aerial phenomenon, referred to commonly as UAPs, and related phenomena. Monthly programs implement the educational part of our mission. We present with these programs a diverse range for everyone with an interest in the UFO/UAP subject. And we don't always have an opportunity to personally hear our speakers in advance. Some of them we've heard, some of them we haven't. And we always caution you to listen carefully to what they say, but also to try to vet the speakers, try to look for corroboration, particularly if you're hearing something that is really out of the ordinary and that it doesn't jibe with other things that you've read or heard in this field. We consider and evaluate the many different types of phenomena that have been observed, detected, and encountered. The possible and most likely explanations for what is being observed, including the technologies or other methodologies that are being used. We consider all the evidence to the extent it's available, and the nature of the interest or agenda of the intelligence, if there is an ET intelligence involved behind the phenomena. We look at many intriguing items related to UFOs. Some of us are interested in the hardware and technology aspect of it. Some are interested primarily in the non-physical manifestations, such as orbs that are frequently seen, conscious presences, light beams, etc. Others are interested in the ancient aliens proposition, the archaeology, and the evidence of ancient alien contact and visitation here on this planet. The abduction experience is another area that we explore from time to time with alien entities. And there are some that are sort of on the fringes that may or may not be related to UFOs and to alien contacts, such as crop circles that may or may not be a messaging system and other forms of communication possibly related to the UFOs. We encourage you to visit our website, www.mufonoc.org, on or after the first of the month for information about the upcoming program for that month and or to renew your annual membership if it's due for renewal. And I want to pause for a minute and talk about the fact that there are two ways to renew. And one is directly through the website. And some of our members apparently have had some issues or problems with that. It's on the membership page. And if you're renewing a single membership, it's on the right side of that picture on the right side of the screen, that whatever you call that template. And you click on it and it takes you to the secure website for Square with our own secure processing code that nobody else uses, and you can renew at that point. Despite the problems that some people have reported, both the assistant section director and myself have independently checked this because we wanted to make sure it worked, and it has worked every time we've tried it. So we would encourage you, but if you get discouraged and for some reason it doesn't work for you, then you can also mail in your renewal or your initial membership, either one, to our address, which is 16835 Algonquin Street, number 248, Huntington Beach, 92649. That address is on the website as well, in case you weren't writing as fast as I was talking. If you join, you get a discounted rate, of course, on your entry to these programs, your registration to these programs, which for an individual is then $7, and for family entry is $12. You can subscribe also on our website to our email list in case you're not getting the upcoming program announcements by email, so that you'll be on that list and you'll receive usually about 3 reminders. We try not to harass you and hit you with a lot of them. But just before the program, you'll see some reminders in your email. Upcoming program on June 15, we have Devin Roon, who is a MUFON FI field investigator for Northern California and the author of the book UFO Investigator: A Personal Look into Circumstances, Investigations, and Discovery. And again, you'll get more details on this program after the first of the month. It's approximately that time when we change over on our website to the upcoming program. And one of the reasons it takes that long is because just getting the information from our upcoming speakers takes a while. We need to get a picture from them. We need to get their write-up of what they're going to talk about. All right, tonight's program is Elana Freeland on the evidence for geoengineered transhumanism, weaponization of the environment and nanotechnology for synthetic biology. This is not a UFO program per se, because this is obviously a little bit different area that we're exploring with this program. Elana is a guest, a writer, editor, investigator, and lecturer from Olympia, Washington. As I mentioned, she's not speaking strictly on the subject of UFOs, but rather will be offering evidence for her proposition that there is a program of geoengineering our planet that has been underway for decades, involving the ionization of our atmosphere in order to facilitate the distribution of chemicals, nanotechnology, and other materials, all to facilitate a larger and perhaps darker plan for the planet and civilization. She will share her views on who and what organizations are behind this effort, along with the methods of implementation, sources of funding, hopefully, and the ultimate goals. It should be an interesting and controversial presentation. If you have questions, you'll see a Q&A logo or icon on the bottom of your screen. You can click on that. You can enter your question. At the end of the program, we'll be taking a look at those, and to the extent we have time, Elana will be addressing those questions and providing some answers. So with that, I want to introduce Elana Freeland, our speaker, who will need to unmute her video camera and carry on with the program.
Thank you very much, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, great. Now, I spoke to Mufon 2 or 3 years ago when I was down in California giving other talks, and I had a wonderful time. I felt that people were open to what I had to say. I made it clear at the beginning of the presentation that I thought they could learn a great deal about the atmosphere from what I had to say. And now I'm that much further ahead because I've just published under my own copyright, I might add. I was with Feral House for 2 books on geoengineering. The first one in 2014, Chemtrails, HARP, and the Full Spectrum Dominance of Planet Earth. And the second book in 2018, Under an Ionized Sky, From Chemtrails to Space Fence Lockdown. This third book is under, as I said, my own copyright. I have left Feral House on very friendly terms, I might add. This one is called Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetism, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology. And it was published in October. So I am, as people may or may not know, a longtime student of Rudolf Steiner. And I was a Waldorf teacher many years ago. I helped to start 4 Waldorf schools in Washington State. And I have continued with anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner's studies, since I left the Waldorf movement. I often refer to him, not in a sense of someone who has all the answers and I don't need to do any thinking, but I want to make clear at the very outset that I am indebted to this great, what I consider initiate, who taught me basically how to think. And not just intellectually, because I've always been an intellectual since I was a little girl, but in a sense that he calls etheric thinking. And it's sort of like heart thinking, but that's too simplistic sounding. It is what it is. And I utilize that approach in the book. If you would chance to read the book, you will see probably a different way of looking at things. And I want to go to my PowerPoint just briefly to point out this. I want to make sure. Can you see that? Is everybody seeing that?
Yes, we cannot solve our problems with the same kind of thinking that created them. Is that
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I just wanted to make sure everybody's seeing what I'm seeing.
yes?
Yes, this is a key element to my approach to tying together what may seem to be disparate topics, such as chemicals, electromagnetics, nanotechnology, and synthetic biology. All of these fit together. And how I go at it is I first paint the macro picture, the big picture, and that would be the geoengineering that we've been undergoing now for onward 3 decades in the program I write about, which is a national security program. There's plenty of material on the internet on this program, but you have to know what you're looking for. And you have to be able to contextualize how scattered all the different pieces are on the internet. I don't know that that's a technique of hiding things, but it certainly works well because a lot of people are trained in graduate school in PhD programs to do research in a certain way. And so if they were to go on the internet of today, where there are many things there that are all in open source, but if you don't have the right context and you don't understand that these things that you're looking for have to do with each other, even though they're scattered in various categories and perhaps even need to know basis and compartmentalization, all the things we're accustomed to hearing about, then you won't recognize them. And I guess that's my forte. Thanks to Rudolf Steiner as well, but also thanks to graduate school, where I did learn at St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I did learn how to do research. And so I wanted to give that as my background. Also as background, 13 years in this topic of geoengineering. It certainly was not something I set out to do many years ago. I'm sort of kind of a generalist and a person who's looking under the rug everywhere for the things that no one's talking about or no one wants talked about. That's sort of maybe my signature as a researcher. But I ended up in Santa Fe, New Mexico years ago, and I became friends with the independent scientist Clifford Carnicom. And Clifford Carnicom is now pretty much forgotten in the rush to keep up with all the news. And also the deafening, I have to say, deafening silence around geoengineering itself. And he is the one who, in the mid-90s, when HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, let me give you a picture of that, when it was being developed up in Gakona, Alaska, a huge phased array antenna acreage for ionospheric research and experiments, Clifford was collecting various condensations and definitely detritus that he found in his HEPA filter from that would follow from jets passing high overhead, whose trails he, having been trained in chemistry, he used to work for the Department of Defense as a scientist, he knew that those trails were not condensation trails. He recognized they had a chemical signature, in fact, varying chemical signatures. So he became interested in that, and he was doing some simple atmospheric tests to determine pressure and yes, condensation, et cetera. So when I met him, we would sit and talk. I had a undergraduate biology background, and he was finding biological material also in all these things he was collecting, all the way from erythrocytes, red blood cells, to gelatinous substance that seemed to have something organic in it, but also probably inorganic as well, and various things. One of which was a filament, a fiber, and it was small, and he began to be concerned because he was finding it in the rainwater, he was finding it in the snow melt, he was finding it everywhere. And eventually what he did, he was interested to see if some of this material was ending up in people's bodies. So he set out a test that he mainly derived because it would dye the filament so that he could see it better, which was called the red wine test. That's a long time ago. And I took the red wine test, which is basically clean your mouth very well. Then you put into your mouth a swig of red wine, you slosh it around, then you spit it into an absolutely sterile, if possible, but very clean little dish. And then you let it settle, whatever the materials are in the red wine. And what happened was, the first thing I saw was, when it all settled, is I saw a filament sort of wriggling across the bottom of the jar. Well, that was pretty dramatic to me, and definitely had my attention. And I followed Clifford's work. There wasn't much I could do. We did blood tests. We began to collect blood tests from people who did the red wine test as well, so that we could see in the blood if there was anything to see. So this was the beginning of researching what came to be known as Morgellons. And Morgellons is a very old term. I think it comes from the 18th century, actually. I don't know who decided to call these filaments Morgellons. It was badly named because really what we were looking at, but we did not have the term for at that time. And I'm talking, I encountered Clifford in the early 2000s, not the 1990s. We did not have the term nanotechnology, but that's really what it was. Yes, you could see this filament, but it was what was inside the filament that really became nano-sized. A nano is 1/1000th of a meter, just to let people know. So we didn't have that term. And we took the term that was offered, which was Morgellons. And the Morgellons is still thought of primarily as a fiber, as a filament. And no one really thinks much about what's inside of it, because that filament is actually made of polymer. And it took Clifford a long time to find the chemical agents as he was isolating different filaments in different petri dishes, to find the right chemical way to break into the filament and to see what was inside. That was the greater part of, I'm guessing, but I'd say at least 10 to 15 years. Meanwhile, he was sending everything that he was finding, because his concern was great for a variety of reasons. He was sending everything to the CDC and to the EPA and the FDA. He was desperately trying to get the attention of scientists who he wanted them to see if they could duplicate his work, and therefore he would have more confidence in it. But what happened was he was ignored. but not fully ignored. At that time, he had some sort of software on his computer by which he could tell who was visiting his site during the day and night. And what I have in the back of the book, the present book, as an appendix, is a list of, I think it's around 180 alphabet agencies in Washington and other places that were hitting Clifford's site multiple times as they checked on him over the days and weeks ahead to see what he had come up with. Meanwhile, not a peep from them, not a response, not a scientific inquiry, nothing. So that's where we started. And that told me, and I was just a writer, I was following the story because it very much interested me. And Adam Parfrey, the head of Feral House at that time, had asked me to write a book on chemtrails, and I was in the process of researching. All right, so that's where I started. Now we're all these years later, 3 books later, and it was the way it worked was each book sort of gave birth to the next one. I'm sure I'm not the first writer to have this experience. I was able to, in the first book, look at the patent that produced HAARP, or patents. I was able to deconstruct Bernard Eastland's 1987 patent, which has some very interesting insights into it, having to do with cyclotron resonance, which is something that certainly affects some of the very, very key primary ions that are in our bodies that we depend upon for health, such as calcium and potassium. And that this was whatever was being dropped from the atmosphere by the jets, and maybe even beyond that. Whatever was being done to the atmosphere, well, it was being done to these very key ions in our bodies. And this was of great concern to Clifford. And once he explained it to me fully, great concern to me. So that was kind of the beginning, the Morgellons that we were breathing in because it was so tiny, and on a nano scale. And in the blood tests, we were finding some of the fibers in people's blood. We were also seeing that the blood was changing, much as we are seeing now with these inoculations in people who've had 2 to 3 inoculations, how the blood pancakes, sort of flattens and coagulates, everything comes together. We were seeing this long ago in the Morgellons blood tests that we were collecting in New Mexico. So eventually Clifford came to the conclusion, just as I have come to the conclusion regarding these inoculations, and I'm certainly not the only one who's come to this conclusion, that the blood was under assault. And when I finished the second book and was starting to look, this was before the lockdown, before the very dramatic scenes in Wuhan, in 2020, I believe it was at the beginning. I was already thinking about biology again in regards to mostly the 5G, 6G that I knew was going up before. This is before the lockdown. I had become very interested in the 5G because of mainly the phased array antenna, because I was very familiar with HAARP, which has a phased array antenna. which is nothing but phased array antennas, actually, would be the way to put it. And I want to show people why HARP is so important, and it's still important, even though you've probably heard a lot of disinformation. Let's take a look at this. This was a committee put together in the state of Alaska when the US Air Force was making noises. In 2013, they shut HARP down and making noises that they were going to destroy it because they didn't need it anymore. And unless the University of Alaska at Fairbanks could find a use for it. And that's what this panel is about. But I want you to hear what the Air Force general, or whatever he is, colonel, has to say about the success of the HARP experiments.
Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you this morning. Very interesting. I wanted to ask a couple questions here about HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility, and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us, and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation, and then a more direct question. Would you be disappointed, or would you lose something if HARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. And so very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer, then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HARP?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it, and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there, and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it.
That's the part I wanted you to hear. It was a success. The ionosphere is now controlled through HARP, not just HARP, which is in Gakona, Alaska, but there are other pieces of this HARP technology that have to do with controlling the ionosphere. And part of this is really about what I just said to you, that Bernard Eastland's patent made it so that the cyclotron resonance would be able to excite the electrons in the ionosphere and then pull them down into our atmosphere and therefore ionize our atmosphere. That's basically how that works. But what does that really mean when you're talking about electron cyclotron resonance? It certainly produces heat. So that's where the whole global warming cover story came from. And it is a cover story. It is not at all accurate in that we are not being told why the atmosphere has been heating. They blamed carbons, they blamed cars, they blamed all the people that have these cars, whatever. But it was not about that at all. It was completely a military objective. And yet there's something more serious. I return to the question of the ions inside of us, the very important key ions. And Robert O. Becker, the doctor who wrote The Body Electric, a great book, and Cross Currents, The Perils of Electropollution, The Promise of Electromedicine, he was very clear about the cyclotron resonance. Okay, cyclotron resonance is a mechanism of action that enables very low strength electromagnetic fields acting in concert with the Earth's geomagnetic field to produce major biological effects by concentrating the energy in the applied field upon specific particles, such as the biologically important ions of sodium, calcium, potassium, and lithium. All right. So again, the control over the ionosphere, yes, it is military. And I like to say, I like to be a little more comprehensive, military industrial intelligence complex. They're all in on it. And HARP, which we hear here might be destroyed. Oh, that's such nonsense. I can't even imagine that they thought that people would believe it. But it is still functioning very well. It has been recalibrated and is more powerful than ever, and works in concert with many other ionospheric heaters around the planet that are not necessarily big, are also small. They're also on oil rigs. They're transportable, and they constitute a weapon system which usually goes by the name of interferometry. And I'm not going to go into that, but I want mainly to concentrate on the impact. Yes, HARP and HARP technology impacts weather and all of the things that Clifford Carnicom named back in 2005 that I still tweak and use all the time to explain this technology, this very crucial technology that you never read about, you never hear anything true about, this geoengineering. So here we have, just in the list, I'm going to go through it really briefly. There's the weather engineering, very, very important. Number one, because that's what keeps our atmosphere ionized, is all the different operations going on under what we would term weather engineering. They call it solar radiation management. They have a lot of terms for it. But it is basically controlling the weather. And I like to make very clear to people that other than the advent of a sort of new weather down in the South Pacific that arises naturally out of the Earth's own way of birthing its weather, which is what Rudolf Steiner would call an etheric function. The weather is an etheric function. That's new and that's natural. But it is immediately taken up by the geoengineers and those who work for them, such as merchant marines, U.S. Navy, U.S. whoever has ships out there. And it is moved along the coast, north along the coast of California, bypassing California, so that California remains in a drought condition. And that weather system is taken up, a little bit's allowed to sprinkle over Oregon. And then up here in my state, Washington State, this is what I call the cauldron. This is where they mix the weather for glomming it onto the jet stream that has a kink in it over Vancouver Island, north of me. They stick it on there, and then they take it east for various weather events. Like recently we had ice and very snow and intense cold. Then we had flooding, and then we have this, and then we have that, and it goes all the way going east. So weather is absolutely, to my knowledge, controlled. Now, am I saying that the Chinese are not controlling weather and the Russians are not controlling weather? Certainly NATO is. And certainly other countries of other persuasions are very concerned with it and are certainly pursuing weather engineering, no question about it, if in nothing else, in a defense mode. Weather, all right, there's the first one. Second one, chemical electromagnetic engineering. This includes a lot of plasma experimentation going on, because you've got the perfect atmosphere that you can now, that the military can now adjust. The plasma is considered the fourth state of matter. And it's basically you could think of it as a fiery gas. But plasma itself is an energy, will provide energy in the future. There are plasma life forms that they are pursuing, because the atmosphere is now changed. We are not breathing the same atmosphere that we were breathing even 50 years ago, not at all. So obviously it's changing our biology to breathe this sort of electrified, battery-ready, antenna-ready atmosphere that has been ionized by controlling the ionosphere. So there's a lot of experimentation going on up there, and you may see some of it, and you may think aliens, you may think off-planet intelligence. But you'd better think again, because I can honestly say that we have the capability to completely control the atmosphere and to produce all kinds of magical moments, you might call them, in the atmosphere with laptop computers in Colorado, in wherever the military has their best and brightest. So think again on some of that. Next, planetary and geophysical engineering. There's a lot I could say about this, but like volcanoes, easy to do with tomography. HAARP tomography is tremendously powerful. I think they control all the plates that are moving beneath the surface of the Earth. They have a huge influence on the geomagnetic grid because there's a lot going on in the magnetosphere as well. So one of the geophysical engineering operations that you might not think of, and if I had the time, and we'll see if I have the time, I would play a clip for you of a nanomaterials PhD commenting on the Paradise, California fire and his insight into what looks to be embers blowing along the ground, but are not embers at all. they are actually nanotechnology being remotely directed to start fires in one place. As we all know, that fire, that so-called forest fire or wildfire was not what we were told it was, because it would burn this house, but not that house. It would burn this car, total metal, but not that tree next to it. So there was something else obviously going on, similar to when Dr. Judy Wood presented her picture of where did the towers go about 9/11. There were many, many, many questions about the technology used to bring down the towers that have to do with new technology and have to do with a directed energy weapon that we were basically ignorant of in 2001. So a lot's going on with geophysical engineering, and the Earth is, of course, the main theater for that, the main laboratory, whatever you want to call it. It's happening in full sight, but we're deceived. And you know, it's sort of a magical act. It's then explained away in a variety of ways. So we need to be very cautious in what we believe. Then next, we have the directed energy weapons, which is a bit of a complex thing now, because you tend to think of asymmetric warfare, nonlinear, based on nonlinear physics, which is what we've had since the revolution in military affairs in 1990s. Warfare is now about full spectrum dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum and the cultural civilian spectrum. Instabilities of systems are identified, whether of a nation or an individual, after which the weaknesses are exploited by means of resonant effects, meaning the remote application of electromagnetic signatures, pulses, and frequencies that basically vibrates things to death and you know, demolecularizes them, would be another way to put it. So scalar interferometry, plasma beam weapons, lasers, masers, ionospheric heaters, cloaking. I mean, you know, directed energy warfare is dependent on this in the civilian sphere, on in regular life, on what the military calls dual use technology. And what dual use means is it can be used for military purposes and it can be used for civilian purposes. A very good example is the cell phone that seems like no one can do without. I personally have never owned one, and I never will. They're a weapon system. They came from the military. The frequencies on your cell phone, the military has access to all of them. You have no access to any of the military ones. So it's a weapon system. And you can use it to, you know, watch some funny theater or call your friend. And it can be used against you, such as is happening now with the people who have been inoculated. They are being followed Bluetooth-wise, and they are tracked and traced. And not just that, but they are actually there are frequencies being directed at them, transmitted to them, that are affecting their health as well. So this is directed energy warfare is pretty complex now, because just about any of our electromagnetic toys and tools can be used against us. Then number 5 here is surveillance and neural manipulation. Of course, surveillance is gone, right? I mean, privacy is gone. Surveillance we've had for years. We tried to stop it, well, kind of, sort of, not really. And now neural manipulation, that's pretty much mind control, but can be much further than mind control. That would include nanotechnology is used for that, artificial intelligence used for that. Remote neural monitoring is what it goes by when it's satellite run. Electromagnetic targeting of populations and individuals, yes, that would be causing digitized frequencies to, perhaps in my area, I tend to think that people are being pulsed with the frequency for complacency. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I tend to think. So then on to the next one, which is the one that I concentrate, that the recent book tour I did concentrated almost entirely on, is nanotechnology, digital synthetic biology, and transhumanism. Very, very important. This is our future. This is the way the future lies. I'm sorry to report. And I will return to that. Okay, the last one, you UFO people will be very interested in, and that's the cloaking and obscuration or detection of exotic propulsion craft and plasma life forms in the plasma cirrus cloud cover. Now, the cirrus cloud cover that you see that is made primarily from plasma events in the ionized atmosphere and with all the trails laid by the jets, rockets, drones, etc. This cloud cover is not moisture cloud cover. It's dry as a bone. It's absolutely dry as a bone. I don't care what it looks like. It can look like cumulus clouds. It can look like anything puffy that makes, it has a dark underbelly and all that, where we think, oh yeah, that's moisture. Not necessarily. The cirrus cloud cover, which is sort of a murky, foggy, always there. People write me all the time, oh, we didn't have any chemical trails this week, Elana. And I say, well, okay, great. So how deep blue are your skies? How deep would you say? Are they deep blue? Are they baby blue or what? Oh, they're baby blue. Well, that's the sign of these cirrus cloud cover, and it is plasma, not moisture clouds. That's all it is. So, of course, deliveries have been made, but maybe you didn't notice them, or maybe they're the ones that are actually from a patent of, let me see if I can find it real quick, a patent that makes things happen invisibly with sound.
An aircraft comprising a gas turbine engine that exhausts a plume of gas is in use. The aircraft comprises an ultrasound generator having an ultrasound actuator and a waveguide to direct ultrasonic waves at the exhaust plume to avoid the formation of contrails.
So maybe that's what happened. And, people would like to think that, oh, we're finally rid of them. All right, so let me just say a little word about the plasma life forms. I think there are a lot of them. I don't know that they're not all like the ones that Wilhelm Reich and Trevor Constable photographed with infrared film back in the 50s and earlier. But there are plasma life forms, and I think that some of what's going on with the inoculations, if you are following the exceptionally intelligent and honest La Quinta Columna group in Spain, you will see many, many things in the these serums that are being injected into people by, it seems, all of the corporations, the big pharma corporations that are doing this. And some of those things will simply be computer parts full with right angles in them, and it's obvious that it's technology. You'll see that, but you'll also see strange life forms, you might call them. When I probed that a little more by looking at some patents, I did find patents for what are called inorganic life forms. So I assume that it is possible that some people, at least some batches of these serums, are attempting to use people as as a host for developing different life forms, you could call them, but they're synthetic life forms. They're not natural life forms. They're not from nature. They're being made in labs. They're being made with plasma, and it's just something to consider. So I really don't know. I haven't seen any photographs that I have seen photographs of things in the cloud cover that are not craft, that do not look like craft, but look like entities. So, we need to pay attention to that, is all I'm saying. All right, so that's that. Very important. Now we're going to turn to the transhuman conundrum. And I start with something that I don't know if it's true. So I'm breaking a rule here, but I want you to know, because we're going to hear more about this. So I'll use what I have, but it's not great. I'm reading from a publication called Europe Renaissance, July 19, 2021. In the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled that vaccinated people worldwide are products. They are now patented goods. According to US law, which can be verified, people who have been vaccinated no longer qualify as humans, and therefore they can no longer be categorized as human beings. In essence, this means that those vaccinated are no longer subject to national or international law. Since 2013, all people vaccinated with genetically modified mRNAs are legally transhuman, and legally identified as transhuman, that means they no longer enjoy any human or other rights of a state. This applies worldwide because GenPoint, GEN-POINT, technology patents are under US jurisdiction and law where they were registered. So I have sent this to 2 lawyers who approached me during my book tour, and I sent them a couple of other things I found, hoping that they would do the research to figure out how much of this is really true. But certainly I would say that it makes sense to me that if transhumanism is being pursued through this particular assault of the inoculations, the gene drive inoculations, that don't just have the gene drive in them, and I need to return to that. Don't let me get away without doing that. Then there will come a time when genetically modified human beings, transhumans, at least the first generation and maybe the early generations, there will be a way to electromagnetically identify them from a distance. And I think we already have that. Those transhumans, the first generations of transhumanism, will not qualify for human rights. Will they then be products, as this says? I don't know what they'll be called, but they'll be tracked because their offspring will be information about the offspring will be very sought after. So we need to turn our imaginations to what will come of just what has already begun. Of course, let me go on to the next little bit that goes with this, but is not about the legal aspect. In Robert Kennedy Jr.'s interview with T.J. Coles, PhD, he begins with a clip of transhumanist Yuval Harari of the World Economic Forum, who talks about surveillance, quote, under the skin, unquote, then goes on to mention how life on Earth will be dominated by, quote, entities that are not organic, the potential AI being much, much bigger than any historical revolution, this being a biological revolution, end of quote. Then I say, the transhumanist objective has always included preparing a transhumanist planet for a transhumanist species connected to artificial intelligence systems. In this way, planet Earth has been, quote, weaponized, unquote, against natural human beings who thus far have had only to deal with sycophantic governments, churches, and corporations attempting to control every facet of their lives. Now, though, we must study the various levels of the latest quiet bid for absolute power, that of chemicals, electromagnetics, and nanotechnology, all virtually invisible, all requiring a new way of thinking by those of us committed to remaining human. So, all right, there is that. And from there, let's return briefly to Morgellons, long ago and far away. Let me just find my way. I'm kind of cheating here, not showing you all these great pictures. Sorry about that. But down to, let's say this. Oh, but I want to show you this first. Should I show you this now? No. Okay, so let's see where we're at. Yeah, let's start here. Okay, so NASA, which I don't trust at all, you know, their cartoon idea of history is that we were dominated by hunter-killer groups from the 1,000,000 BC mark to 10,000 BC. Well, I could argue with that, but I'm going to go ahead here. The agriculture age, they say, was from 10,000 BC to 1800 AD. And then the industrial age was from 1800 to 1950. That's kind of true. I remember in the 70s how they were shutting down all the farms and various industries and shipping them to third world countries, as we called them then. Then the IT age is from 1950 to 2020. Now it starts getting interesting. Okay, the IT age. Well, I didn't know it ended in 2020, but it didn't really end, did it? It sort of elided into a bio-nano. Okay, bio-nano, and then they have 2022 question mark. Like, how long is it going to last? Well, they obviously don't know, but I would guess a very long run. And it would include virtual. All right, so let's work with this. So we don't think in terms of just IT anymore. It is now what would be more honest in this little diagram would be to say that IT is merging with bio/nano. So it's IT/bio/nano. Yes, that makes sense. And that the virtual is part of that. And by virtual, I'm thinking of the Sentient World Simulation white paper, which if you haven't read it, you might want to. It's up on the net still. And it is, I believe it was at Cornell University, but I could be wrong on that. It was done years ago, but then this is from, look when this was written, this is from The Future Is Now, NASA's Future Is Now, 1969. This PowerPoint has been very useful to many of us as we sort of piece together how things are really being run and what the thoughts really are behind it. So, all right, so the IT bio nano era is what we're in now. And when did it start? Oh, 2020. Well, and what happened in 2020? Well, we certainly know that. Did they know it in 1969? I would assume they knew something, that there would be a big shift in 2020 and that they would certainly know why and maybe be involved in that shift itself. But these sentient world simulation is a very serious thing. And when you first read it, you think, oh, that can't be. But I don't think Mufon would do that, because Mufon is aware of off-world possibilities of a futurism that most people don't dare to even think about. So the virtual aspect is of sentient world simulation is what is now being called the metaverse. And the metaverse has to do with each individual on the planet having a virtual twin, a digital twin, you could say, that is just like the so-called natural person. There's a virtual Elana, and certainly through the surveillance and through all of the different neural connections that they now have with all of us via satellite, via the towers, via the cell phones, via all the nano sensors in the environment, all the dust motes that are smart dust. All these things are feeding data into big, vast data munchers, big supercomputers, AIs, whatever you want to think of them as. And from that, they are able then to actually make an identical virtual twin of the natural person. And what is the point there? It isn't just to say, gee, we can do this. No, it's so the virtual part, Elana, can run this natural Elana, so that when I am getting thoughts, and I think I'm making my own thoughts, I can be fed thoughts by the virtual Elana that is in turn being fed by various supercomputer programs or whatever. All right, so it's one giant nervous system that we are a node in, and that's all we are. Each individual is now a node. And am I serious about now? Well, I know that it's being developed, and I know that it's being advanced very quickly, very quickly. So let's just assume it's now, and that it has begun, and it's not where it will be in 5 years. It's not where it will be in 2030, their big marker date. But yes, it has begun. No question about it. We don't use future tense anymore on this, because we have here NASA telling us the IT bio nano age began in 2020 and will go as long as it goes. So, okay, so that's important. Now, let's go. Let me see what this is. I don't remember, so you're going to have to bear with me. This is Barry Trower. No, let's wait for that. Here is Eric Drexel. Let's talk a little about Eric. Eric Drexler is the founder or discoverer, I don't know quite what word to use for him, of nanotechnology. Now nanoparticles have always been with us. There's nanoparticles in space. There's nanoparticles everywhere you go, everywhere you look, everywhere you breathe. These are just nanoparticles. It's a size thing, and it has a variety of elements that it's made up of that are probably from the periodic table, maybe even some that have not made it to the periodic table yet. I don't know, but it is not the same thing as nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is the nanomaterials category, in which materials are made of atoms by laying atoms next to each other. One atom and then another atom and then another atom and another atom. In other words, it's on the atomic level that these materials are being made. And some of them are simply building blocks that you can build jet planes with, or walls, or buildings, or sidewalks, or roads. They're just building blocks, tiny, but with a lot more, with a lot of them, and they all self-replicate. They don't reproduce. They're not natural. They self-replicate, and they self-assemble as well, which makes them very handy for inserting into biological bodies, as you can imagine. Okay, so Eric, he was in grad school in the 70s. I read 2 books on him, so I'm going from what I read. And he came up with this idea out of the story is he came up with it out of his idealism, his idea that he could, if we had this technology, we could have things built for us, and it wouldn't take up all our time and all our money. And we would then be freed up to do more fantastic, wonderful human things, like create art and things like that. That was his youthful idea. Did he know about the American military? Well, I don't know. But he said something extremely profound and scary that I want to share with you. And he was thinking this a long time before he published his 1990 thesis, PhD thesis, in which he finally spilled the beans on how the nanotech works. And then boom, it was off to the races. And we've been involved in the nanotechnology revolution ever since. So Eric was thinking about machines able to build copies of themselves that were highly non-biological in their organization, not made of biomolecules. Having done some reading in ecology and having some understanding of the way the biological world works, it was pretty clear to me that it would be possible to build, not necessarily easily, but it would be possible to build a mechanism of the kind that could operate in the natural world on abundantly available compounds, or perhaps a wide range of compounds, to build copies of itself. Something like that would be a lot worse than any plague or insect infestation you could think of. And in a limited case of awfulness, such a thing could have a very broad ability to consume organic matter. Obviously, there would be no predators, no ecological checks and balances. And so it could generally destroy the biosphere. Well, that is a very sobering thought, especially when I consider that nanotechnology has been being delivered to us in aerosols for about 20 plus years. And we have breathed much of it in. Much of it has compacted into the soil, by the way, and into the trees, the tree bark, and the branches, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, it's not all just in our bodies, but it is in our bodies. And what is it being used for in there? Well, most of the nanotechnology in our bodies have microcomputers in them, microprocessors, very, very tiny, 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 right? And those microprocessors are in touch with processors that are everywhere else, in satellites, on the ground, underground, and there are either AI programs or programmers, human programmers, or maybe not so human programmers, who are reprogramming them at a distance for various uses. It's easy to do. What makes it easy is you don't have to program every teeny weeny little nanobot, nanorobot. No, they swarm. They have a swarm consciousness, sort of like a beehive, like an anthill. They think collectively, and think is maybe not the right word. They are conscious. They are collectively conscious as one entity that can be directed remotely to do a variety of things. And that is what you would see in the Paradise, California fires. You would see them operating together to burn certain buildings and then run off and ignore a whole bunch of other buildings and go to another building that they are programmed to destroy. So that's kind of what nanotechnology can do. And the most interesting part of it to me is the swarm consciousness. So let's keep that in mind. Where are all these nanoparticles? Well, unfortunately, they're everywhere and they're in everything, and you're probably eating them. If you're still eating refined junk food, oh, then you're eating nanoparticles. You're eating nanotechnology, maybe. I don't know. But I know that there is no safeguarding us from nano particles. There's nothing written in that says that the manufacturer has to tell you nanoparticles are present in the cake batter you buy, the candy bar you're eating, the whatever filler is used for other foods. No, you don't need to be told. So that's where we are with this biophage. It would be what you could call it. That Eric Drexler indicates that it could actually eat the biosphere. Here's how kids are being programmed to think it's cool, very cool, to have nanobots. Yeah.
This is a microbot. It doesn't look like much, but when it links up with the rest of its pals, things get a little more interesting. The microbots are controlled with this neurotransmitter. I think what I want them to do, they do it. The applications for this tech are limitless. Construction, What used to take teams of people working by hand for months or years can now be accomplished by one person. And that's just the beginning. How about transportation? Microbots can move anything, anywhere, with ease. If you can think it, the microbots can do it. The only limit is your imagination. Microbots.
Well, I don't know if I'm as excited as as that little guy, but nanotechnology. Nanotechnology has extraordinary uses, extraordinary, and it's cheap. It's not expensive to make these. But here's one of the problems with it, besides the fact that it's a biophage, is that it's on an atomic level. Do you remember the last time we had something on the atomic level? I think it was called the Manhattan Project. And that too was on the atomic level, very different. That was a bomb. On the other hand, this nanotechnology has a swarm consciousness, and we don't quite know what that means. And we do know, though, now that it is in the serums that are being inoculated into people. We do know that nanotechnology is in there. And we do know that some of what's in the serums looks like computer technology on a nanoscale. And that certainly has to do with transhumanism. No question about it. So when we start thinking about are transhumans being produced now, I would have to reply in the affirmative that it's begun. How it's going to go, I have no idea. But I know that it will continue until it is stopped. And that is a problem because of the high technology that has produced basically an almost entirely programmed human race. And that all has come, in my opinion, from that cyclotron resonance thing of the fact that HARP itself is able to produce a resonance that affects masses of people, and that's hugely important. Let's just see what resonance is so that we can begin to understand how. Just imagine that you are being targeted, and you will have thoughts that are really not yours, that are being created in you, but because you don't have the concept of a technology that could do that, let's say you don't know, you will immediately become upset because maybe the thought that you're having is a very negative thought, or a very terrified thought, or something extreme. If you could control the ionosphere, then you can control the ionospheric well, or as it's called, the Schumann well, that the Earth rests in, that the Earth is in. And therefore, that resonance would reach out to all the Earth and affect the beings on the Earth. And that's kind of what this little piece of a very, very important, I think, little film that's on the internet, free, Resonance, Beings of Frequency, to understand this amazing human quality of ours where we resonate easily. You go to the ocean, you feel that resonance of the waves. You begin to sort of relax. You're kind of moving to the resonance that the waves are producing, and you have these wonderful experiences of just breathing deeply and relaxing. And yes, it's a wonderful thing. On the other hand, if someone has a frequency that is being broadcast to you to have various negative effects on you, to basically control your mind and your body, would you recognize it? Would you know it not to be yours? Or would you simply begin to resonate with it? These are big questions that we need to ask now, because we're moving into a very different era, than the one before. So let's see what happens here.
An unknown scientist is about to make a discovery that should have changed everything. His name was Winifred Otto Schumann. On the day in question, he was teaching his students about the physics of electricity, how a sphere within a sphere can create electrical tension, and subsequently, a frequency. Schumann's class had struggled to understand the subject, so to make it easier, the professor instructed them to imagine the Earth as one sphere and the ionosphere as another. He then asked them to calculate the tension that would exist in between. Having no idea himself, Schumann also began to calculate. Eventually, he arrived at a frequency of approximately 10 Hertz. As incredible as it seemed to Schumann, our planet had a pulse, a measurable frequency that surrounded life on Earth. Although the professor was proud of his find, he didn't see it as a hugely significant one, especially as it was only published in a small science journal, confined to the back pages, under the heading of Schumann resonance. It would take several years, and an incredible twist of fate, before the professor would begin to realize the true importance of Schumann resonance. That twist of fate had begun 30 years earlier, with another German scientist by the name of Hans Berger. Using an EEG machine he had built himself, Berger had made the first ever recording of electrical frequency transmitted by the human brain. It was initially suggested the wave be named after the man who'd discovered it, but Berger, being a modest man, elected for an alphabetical name and called it the alpha wave. Shortly after Professor Schumann's discovery, one of Hans Berger's colleagues, a man named Dr. Ankermüller, happened to stumble upon a bedraggled copy of a small scientific journal. The exact same small scientific journal that Professor Schumann's discovery had been published in several years before. He read the piece several times, shaking his head in disbelief. He realized instantly the magnitude of what was in front of him. The frequency of the alpha waves, recorded by Hans Berger, were almost identical to Schumann resonance. The frequency of the Earth. Dr. Ankermüller immediately contacted Schumann to convince him to investigate further. Schumann agreed and worked alongside one of his students to refine his discovery. They studied in detail how tension is discharged by lightning in the Earth ionosphere cavity. Eventually, they came up with an exact frequency. The pulse of the Earth, Schumann resonance, was exactly 7.83 Hertz. The discovery was remarkable. Schumann resonance wasn't just similar to the alpha waves of the human brain, it was identical. The brain's frequency, which controlled our creativity, our performance, our stress, anxiety, and our immune system, had somehow tuned in to the frequency of the planet. The pulse of the Earth had become the pulse of life.
So note that not only is our brainwave a match for the Schumann resonance, which says all sorts of things about our relationship with our beautiful planet Earth. But did you notice that the brainwave 7.83 also has to do with our immune system? Is it possible that this control over the ionosphere has been a godsend for the transhumanists in how it can undermine our immune system? Because, there's a site you can go to where you can check the Schumann resonance for each day. And I was saying on the book tour that before I left, I checked it, it was 13 hertz, not 7.83, pretty much almost twice that. But I remember even weeks before that, I had checked the Schumann resonance, it was 26 hertz. So the geoengineers are changing us by changing our macro environment. That certainly is part of it. And then there's this, which is shocking unless you realize these guys are everywhere. I mean, graduate schools are producing these guys a dime a dozen.
This was actually having one animal learn something and seeing and recording that activity and put it into the sensory cortex of the second animal, and that animal acquires the knowledge. From the human drone technology standpoint, you can attach the human brain to another human brain, you can direct motor activity, or you can send communication and information. Dr. Ventnor's work is, my view, the equivalent of the development of nuclear weapons when you realize that he created life in a cell. He programmed yeast cells to produce anything he wanted. These can be inserted into you through the hypospray needles. You put in a specific gene slicing, you program what you like, you put it in the cell, and it can reproduce and make as much as you like. It sends a signal and tells which portion of the DNA should unwrap, unfold, and produce a product. Related to this is an idea called dreads. These are designer receptors that can be remotely controlled. You can create a cell, you can put it somewhere in the body, and you can remotely activate it. So you have the capacity to create any product, as long as you know the DNA sequence. You can insert it into a living system, and you can remotely control it. That may affect the way you think, the way you act. So once you know that the technology is there to edit, splice, and program a cell, and the technology currently exists to administer it to somebody and have it go park anywhere you program it to go park, proliferate, and do its function, you can have things activated in other people's brains. Just people have figured out how to hide imagery in the DNA of bacteria. You can have the information reproduced in a string form as a form of a protein. The new way to hide information is going to be in DNA. This is the first experiment showing what imagery you can hide in bacteria. This is the latest. It's a GIF file. Well, this is what the Chinese are doing with DNA. Merging DNA systems with quantum computing will be really quite an amazing and both lethal threat. The next thing I wanted to mention to you is memory. Can we erase memory? Can we modify memory? Can we change memory? The short answer is yes.
Could I ask someone when the Q&A is to start so that I don't overplay my hand here? Anybody there? Yoo-hoo.
Yes, we don't have a fixed time period, but I should have asked you that probably before. We had so much confusion at the beginning. Typical program doesn't run more than about an hour and a half, and then is open to Q&A.
Okay, am I at the hour and a half yet?
It looks like, yeah, just about.
Almost, yeah. Okay, so I think I'll do 15 minutes more of presentation and then do Q&A. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. All right, so now let's go on. Now you see what the mind, a lot of people are still thinking about privacy. I haven't thought of privacy for several years now. I assume that any privacy I have has been surmounted. So I really don't think about it. And I recommend that you do the same thing. Now, here's the next phrase that I would like to embed in your minds. Remember, the first one was we have to, any type of solution will have to be from a different kind of thinking than the thinking that went into the problem, into creating the problem. Yes, this is also excruciatingly important. Molecular biology is now being replaced by digital synthetic biology. And I'm going to try to explain to you what this means. In fact, I experienced it on my my book tour, sadly for me. Let's go here. I'm going to bypass the Morgellons. Well, let's just look at a couple of Morgellons. All right, so as I said earlier, Morgellons was nanotechnology, but we didn't have the term nanotechnology for it. It certainly was man-made, and it was distributed through the chemical trails of jets, which is quite an amazing feat in itself, that they would think of that, oh, let's use aerosols, yes, because people will have to breathe it and they'll take it in. And then we'll work on it from there. I mean, I guess that's what they thought, because that's what happened. So the nanotech, which is Morgellons, called Morgellons, sort of looked about like this. These are some old pictures of a very nice woman named Tommy Target, a Morgellons sufferer. I don't know what's happened to her, but she did some excellent self-observation of her Morgellons process. And I assume she died, but I hope I'm wrong. And here's where she says, bingo, the Morgellons pathogen resides within red blood cells. The formation of fibers involves the agglomeration of red blood cells into a fiber arrangement and the fusion of the pathogens into a solid polymer substance. The pathogen is possibly carbon nanotube. That would be CNTs. CNTs is carbon nanotubes, equipped with biological and synthetic functionality based on the known composition of the fibers. And that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So we're on the same trail, folks, with this this inoculation. There's no question about it. Here we see the hexagons. I talk about the hexagons in the book. They're very, very important. Here we see more detritus. We can see through this, this artery or vein, and what has happened inside it. It almost looks like computer wiring of some sort. Here we see insect parts, and that was very much complained about by Morgellons sufferers. Insects would come out of their sores. It was then there would be blood and tissue and crystalline structures. This one looks like an insect's head. More insect anatomy. Yes, and this is Clifford, who pretty much single-handedly produced over 100 papers on this You can find his research at carnicominstitute.org. It's being revised, so it may be a little bumpy for you to find this, that, and the other, but do look up The Transformation of a Species that he wrote, the paper, November 28, 2019. All right, so now I've established that Morgellons has to do with what has come since. And that, and we're talking 20 some years that this has been worked on. And meanwhile, in the media, the reason you haven't heard about Morgellons and you don't have any idea of any numbers of who's suffering from is because it's all been capped. It's all been capped and kept from the public because it was attached to this research that is now ending up in the serums and in the blood of people who've been inoculated. So take my word for it and then read the book, because that's what I cover in the book. All right, let's listen to La Quinta Columna. This is Ricardo Delgado, and he's talking about this, and this will take us to the end. But wait a minute, before we do that, let me just show you what graphene oxide looks like. And graphene oxide is one of the many nanotechnologies that is being injected into people now. This is what it does with around a cell phone. And that would include your cell phone.
Включенный мобильный телефон. Ну, включенный именно когда идет вызов. Пока выключенный. Сейчас я набираю номер. И смотрите, что будет происходить. Вот он, вызов пошел. Смотрите, что теперь. Ну. Вызов идет, если вы можете смотреть, видите.
Obviously, that is a form of graphene.
Интересно, в голове у нас то же самое творится. Когда я первый раз это обнаружил, даже страшно стало. Ну все, я выключаю.
So, in other words, around electromagnetism, much as Morgellons was, this nanotechnology known as graphene oxide becomes very active. And it was the same with Morgellons. Okay, now let me just check this a second. Okay, let's listen to Ricardo about this technology. And then we will be at the point where I know I've thrown a lot at you in these minutes, but I think we can come up with a few good questions that will lead to more.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ricardo Delgado, and I am the founder and director of La Quinta Columna. All the vaccines tested, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Janssen, and Moderna, contain exclusively nanotechnology. We have found nanorouters, which also emit MAC addresses that can be registered with Bluetooth wireless technology by just using your own mobile phone and the help of an app. We have found nanoantennas and plasmonic antennas for the amplification of these signals. We have also identified nanorectennas, which act as rectifier bridges of alternating, direct current, codecs, and certain logic gates for the encryption of these nanocommunications emitted from the inoculated individual to a remote server. The primary material for the elaboration of these microstructural complexes is graphene oxide, the presence of which is decisive for the self-assembly of these structural complexes. The main mechanisms of exfoliation of graphene oxide within the body into graphene quantum dots are natural biodegradation mediated by the enzyme myeloperoxidase, and the Tesla-phoresis mechanism, which are microwave electromagnetic fields emitted from mobile phone signals with different frequency ranges.
El óxido de grafeno inyectado dentro del cuerpo adquiere propiedades.
Graphene oxide injected into the body acquires magnetic properties in contact with hydrogen and living cells. This is why most vaccinated people have this exacerbated magnetism at the point of inoculation, and subsequently in the upper solar plexus and the skull. Graphene oxide is detected in the body by our immune system as if it were a pathogen.
Detectado en el organismo por nuestro sistema inmunológico como si de un patógeno se tratara.
Once injected, it has an affinity for the central nervous system. Basically, the spinal cord in our brain because of its higher electrical conductivity. In the central nervous system, it causes immobilization of limbs, strokes, paraplegia and alteration of the nervous system. Graphene oxide has a blood clotting factor and increases thrombogenicity or thrombus proliferation. The ultimate consequence of thrombi is all kinds of cardiovascular accidents, such as embolisms, ischemias, strokes, aneurysms, etc. Graphene oxide also has an affinity for electrical organs, such as our heart, especially when its cardiac activity increases, and therefore its electrical activity. At that moment, this graphene oxide targets the heart and inflames it, generating myocarditis or pericarditis. In addition, graphene oxide has the ability to absorb electromagnetic radiation from our environment and multiply it with a transistor effect. Thus, it generates small discharges that cause arrhythmias in our cardiac system. This explains why so many athletes are suffering from arrhythmias when they have increased cardiac activity. Consequences of these arrhythmias are fainting, blackouts or syncope, linked or not to unexpected or sudden death. A large part of our vaccinated population is suffering unexpected or sudden death when interacting near these microwave sources. Graphene oxide also has the capacity to generate mutagenesis, chromosomal alteration, and cancer, so that those people who have recently suffered tumors or neoplasms, after vaccination, will rapidly resurface a line of metastases, and those who are completely healthy will be at high risk of developing cancer. Graphene oxide is extremely toxic, and its toxicity is also dependent on the electromagnetic radiation it absorbs. Wherever it goes, it generates tissue inflammation, systemic or multi-organ inflammation, and a cascade of free radicals. When the oxidative stress generated by this toxic substance inside the body breaks the equilibrium in the redox balance and exceeds a certain threshold above the antioxidant levels of our endogenous glutathione, our immune system collapses and favors the famous cytokine storm. This graphene oxide, which is injected as a prime material in vaccines, is eliminated from the body through our lungs. But if it is irradiated whilst found in the lungs, the subsequent inflammation of the lung tissue causes bilateral pneumonia. If the vaccinated survive the initial doses of graphene oxide injected into their blood, it will be degraded in the body by the neutralizing antibodies that are responsible for its degradation. Once the graphene and its toxicity is gone, so are the antibodies that neutralize the substance, which also trigger our immunoglobulins. This is why people are being forced to be revaccinated every 3 months, in order to maintain the body's levels of this toxic substance, by claiming that they no longer possess immunity. In short, the non-existent, non-isolated, non-purified, non-cultivated SARS-CoV-2 presented to us in the official version and its variants is in the real version the graphene oxide introduced consciously and voluntarily in the flu vaccine of the 2019 to 2020 campaign. In other words, the disease, relabeled COVID-19, is simply a graphene-enhanced acute irradiation syndrome. Therefore, the first and basically the only artificial wave had our elderly in nursing homes as its target population, whose flu vaccination rate is very close to 100%. Our elderly were previously vaccinated with this substance, and then irradiated with the famous cell phone antennas. which suspiciously, 8 out of 10 are implanted in the vicinity of nursing homes or old folks' homes.
8 de cada 10 de ellas son implantadas en las inmediaciones de geriátricos o residencias. Justificaron el genocidio.
They justified the genocide of our elderly as a pretext to tell the entire world population that we were facing a new coronavirus, so that under the fear of this alleged contagion tall tale they could proceed to inoculate the entire world population with graphene oxide. The aim is to eliminate a large part of the population and use the behavioral modulation properties of graphene oxide in the field of neuroscience and artificial intelligence for the remaining population.
Campo de la neurociencia y la inteligencia artificial para la población remanente. El óxido de grafeno tiene...
Graphene oxide has a special affinity for neurons. Once installed in neurons, it generates an artificial neural network that gradually replaces the natural neural network.
Paulatinamente a la red neuronal natural. Cuando el tamaño de las
When the size of graphene oxide nanoparticles is less than 35 nanometers, they easily pass through our blood-brain barrier, a membrane that protects our brain from possible damage coming from the outside, and gain access to our own neural network. On the one hand, graphene oxide manages to break neuronal synapses so that our brain can be mapped and literally collect information such as memories, local thoughts, sensations, emotions, or feelings.
Sensaciones, emociones o sentimientos. Entenderá ahora por qué se ha aprobado.
You will now understand why during this pandemic, legislation such as the Neuro Rights Act has been passed in certain countries. Moreover, this graphene oxide can be stimulated remotely and wirelessly, using for this purpose the implementation of the new 4G, 4G Plus and 5G technology.
La nueva tecnología 4G, 4G Plus y 5G.
All vaccinated people send their data to an external server, controlled by artificial intelligence, probably financed by Mr. Elon Musk.
Financiada por el señor Elon Musk. Esta síntesis de información.
This information provided is a synopsis of more than 20,000 hours of research, working with a multidisciplinary group of scientists, and is based on the scientific discoveries in Dr. Campra's final technical report, which provides unequivocally conclusive evidence of the presence of reduced graphene oxide in samples of the vaccines produced by AstraZeneca, Moderna, Pfizer, and Janssen. This research also emerges from scientific analysis of the material and observational evidence. We understand that they have taken advantage of the general ignorance and lack of knowledge of the medical and health community regarding matters such as nanotechnology to carry out this sinister plan of what they call Agenda 2030. You can learn more about this valuable information at www.laquintacolumna.net, where you will find all the evidence and scientific articles stated here. Since the vaccination process is global, we are facing the disappearance of the human species as we know it within a few months. They call it post or transhumanism, or simply the Human 2.0 project. In that new stage, the automaton survivor will be deprived of self-thought, autonomy, and free will. A slave species, diminished and entirely dependent on these technocratic oligarchies. La Quinta Columna is made up of millions of people around the world who seek to maintain the essence of human beings, respect for humanity, and their dignity as a unique species. La Quinta Columna uncovered this crime against humanity, against its life, and against its very nature. Please, share this vital information with those around you.
All right, so let's just, the only thing I want to add to my presentation is that, yes, the graphene oxide is primarily inoculated into people, but those of us who have chosen not to be vaccinated shouldn't feel too confident, because graphene oxide is used in aerosols for a variety of purposes by the US military, but by the military industrial intelligence complex, one of which only one is the ice nucleation that now pretends to be snow. We all have it in us, and it self-replicates, it self-assembles. It is a carbon nanotube technology, and we need to wake up and study this technology so that we can decide on how we're going to consciously contend with it. Is what I'm thinking. Yes, there are many remedies. There are ways to ameliorate the situation, and I go into that in the book as well. But basically, it's our consciousness that we need to really develop now, because we are facing an artificial intelligence world that is will be running transhumans remotely. So let's consider that. And I'm open now for questions, Q&A.
Okay, well, one question that we've got is, what is the difference between having one cell phone used occasionally versus living close to 5G transmitters? How is graphene oxide involved?
Oh, well, the graphene oxide would be stimulated by really any electromagnetism of, I don't know quite what gigahertz or megahertz it would be, but I think I would start measuring things. You hear that there's no device you can get that will measure 5G. That's not true. I just had a long conversation in Arizona with a man who's been doing electromagnetic adjustments of dirty electricity and wireless damage for 30 years. So we need to really start measuring, and so that it becomes real to our minds. I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that's what's come up for me. As far as the transmitters go, I assume they're just about everywhere, and they're small, so you're not going to see them. And that means that measuring is even more important than ever. Minimizing the dirty electricity, figuring out which toys and tools you really need that are electromagnetic, doing absolutely zero wireless, and that would mean, like, I use my computer with an ether cable, but I do no wireless anything, and that would of course curtail the cell phone. Why not a flip phone for emergencies and keep it in the glove box? I mean, I really don't get the addiction that goes on, because I have never tempted myself. Had I done that, I might be in dire straits right now, but I haven't had to give anything up because I never wanted one in the first place, plus no TV.
You're saying the transmitters are very small. Do you mean that the 5G system is not mounted on these cell towers that already exist? And there's
no, not at all. It's spread everywhere. What you see in the pictures, and I would not go by the pictures, by the way, but I'm going to tell you about one anyway, is you see a sort of ovoid shape at the top of a, say, a phone pole, a telephone pole, or just a pole downtown. I mean, I see them all the time. Parkways where you have those terrible LEDs in those lighting fixtures, so that are also ovoid. You're going to have, there's going to be 5G transmitters, antennas. I mean, they've been, I know you remember in 2020 when we all got involved in this this fear. What was going on? Well, we kept hearing these reports of white trucks pulling up at schools and putting up transmitters, and everywhere that you look, there were white trucks putting up, they went to work, because the 5G is crucial. And believe me, I just finished a book tour, and I got hit in California. I was seriously hit. It took all my energy. It completely shut down my digestive tract. I had, I wanted to be true to my commitments. I had made these commitments to all these people. So I did continue, but in between each talk, I did 5 alone in LA. I slept, and I took the Tony Pantalaresco baths, which is the baking soda, Epsom salt, sea salt, borax baths, in order to just calm my nervous system, because I was getting microwaved by 5G systems, no question about it. At first, I thought it was just, oh, I'm tired, and and blah blah blah. No. I got what was going on, and this is the future. And I can even tell you, as long as we're on the subject, I may as well tell you the technology used in it, because I know what it was. And the irony is that I was getting hit with the very technology I was trying to inform the public about. So there you go. Media access control, and MAC, that's the word MAC, media access control, how they know where you are, how they connect with you. And then they use what's called, believe it or not, it's Corona. That's the acronym, Coordinate and Routing System for Nano Networks. And what that does is the 5G transmission of a digital frequency of a set of symptoms for COVID, a set of symptoms for the flu, a set of symptoms for SARS-CoV-2, whatever it is, that set of symptoms is now translated from molecular. Don't need the molecular anymore, if ever we even had it. You translate it into the digital components, and then you transmit that with 5G system. And I believe, this is just me, I believe that it's correlative with a 6G system, which has greater penetration in order to get it right into the body. And then in the body, you saw that little clip from the children's film about the nanotech. In the body, all the nano swarms are there waiting for their master's voice at a distance, who then program them to take up this frequency, this digital frequency that has been transmitted to your body, which is what happened to me on this trip. And then it will reiterate it throughout the body. And you'll have a full-scale, quote, illness, unquote, that you may think is viral, but it's not viral at all. As Tom Cowan proved in The Contagion Myth, a very great book, everybody should read it, there is no virus. Well, there's no virus the way we've been taught there's virus. There are virus, but they are not inimical. They're just garbage in the cell waiting to be gotten rid of. So the key for me in figuring all this out was, there's this technology called Corona, Coordinate and Routing System for Nano Networks. That's what they did. They got it into my body, and then the nanotech took it up and just repeated it throughout my body, so that it didn't have to deal with my immune system, because I'm very proud of my really great immune system. And it bypassed my immune system and made me weak, made me so weak that I had to cancel 2 venues. I was very sorry to do that. And then come home and lie on the couch for a week to get my strength back. So I have experienced it. I know this is how they're going to do a lot of the targeting, and we're all familiar, I hope we're all familiar with the word targeting. Populations can be targeted, ethnic groups, genders, whatever you have the frequency for, you can send out a digital broadcast for that, And all those people will have the symptoms. Now, I'm making a distinction between the symptoms and the disease. You notice that. There is no disease. It is all symptoms digitally composed, very carefully discovered over time. And, you could do the bubonic plague for all that. And people would believe it. I mean, we know, at least I know, that people go to hospitals thinking they have COVID or not really sure what they have, but then told they have COVID. And it's like, well, it's either a flu or they're being digitally broadcast at with a set of symptoms. And the nanotechnology has taken it up, and the symptoms are throughout the body.
All right, another question is, if a person is unvaccinated, are they safe from attack by graphene oxide?
Well, the graphene oxide that is in the aerosols that's coming from the sky for the geoengineers, I don't know how much there is. I have so far found 7 or 8 uses of graphene oxide, because it's like a miracle nanotechnology. I mean, and this is what happens with the Western technology is they find something like nanotechnology, they find something that is just, wow, I can use it for this, and I can use it for this, and this, and this, and this. And then they just do it with no safety measures, no nothing. I mean, it just drives me crazy. So I don't know how much is in the aerosols. And I know the thing I would do, which of course I live very Spartan. I live not like a Luddite entirely. I have my computer, I write books, I need a computer. I go on the internet, but everything else, I don't own it. I have a landline. I don't have a TV. Well, who needs a TV when you have a computer? I have no desire for other things. I don't need them, but I do need this for my livelihood, the computer. So that's what I recommend to people, is that they start looking at that. And in the book, I go very carefully into the smart city concept and show how it's a UN foil, a UN assault, under the guise of sustainable development. It's really a total assault and a push for transhumanism. And so to live as naturally as we can and enjoy being a human being. I mean, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, another question is really easy and quick to answer. What is the name of your book? I guess this person's talking about your last book.
Right, Geoengineered Transhumanism, How the Environment Has Been Weaponized by Chemicals, Electromagnetism, and Nanotechnology for Synthetic Biology. And it's 690 pages, and you can order it from Amazon, but you'll get the black and white edition. For $15 more, you should go to the Rudolf Steiner bookstore in Seattle, and he will send, Frank Dauenhauer will send you for $15 more than the black and white, a color edition that is well worth keeping for a lifetime.
Okay, they're also asking about titles of other books, but is there a website or something they can go to if they want to get all the titles?
Yeah, well, I have my elanafreeland.com site, which has everything I've written. I mean, I've written 3 books on geoengineering, and each one leads to the next one. And, I have people who've read them multiple times. And then I have a series called Sub Rosa America, which is about the deep state formation after John Kennedy's assassination. And that's a fictionally based, but only so that I can comment on America. And those are very important to understanding what has happened to our country.
Okay, that's it. Those are the 3 questions that were submitted. So I think we're at the end of the session.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And it did go quite quickly. I'm always amazed. I'm like, oh my gosh, 2 hours, but it goes fast.
All right, we appreciate your presentation, and I just want to let people know again that our next program is going to be June 15th, and that is going to be Devin Roon, author of the book UFO Investigator, a personal look into circumstance, investigations, and discovery. That title doesn't tell us too much, but it's going to be an interesting program. So we hope to see you back then. All right, that is it for this evening. Thanks for attending.